New Year, happy Sunday. A lot of happies here. I am not a recording. Sometimes I feel like I am one, but I'm not. So I just literally ran through. Woo! It was so good to see Pastor Hobbs, and my husband just brought me down. I'm literally running all the time, but I'm here. Amen. I don't got my sneakers on, but I am here. Just want to give my hubby a shout out. He's such a blessing. One more time to bring me here to the radio broadcast. I'm married right, y'all. I'm married right. I waited on the Lord. Woo! I did. And I married right. So thank God for him. But happy Sunday to you all. My name is Jacqueline Smith. It's been a minute because I've been recording for a minute, but I will tell you why. But I'm not a recording. I am live and in person. And happy to be here one more time. What a beautiful Sunday. My name is Jacqueline Smith Ampey. And this is Morality Moves. This is the fourth Sunday of every month at 3 o'clock. The fourth Sunday of every month at 3 o'clock. And I'm happy to be before you. Happy to be before you. I just ran in. Hopefully my hair ain't standing up. Well, you know, as you come as you are. So I'm going to come as I is. So I'm here, and here is just to talk to you one more time about Morality Moves. And when I thought through, you know, what is Morality Moves? Why are we here? Because the world, how the world is, there should be voices talking about what is right and what is wrong. And last time I checked, Lord is the one who defines that, not us. And I thank God that he gives us the opportunity to say, hey, this is right and this is wrong. So Morality Moves is about moving in morals, moving what's right, not sitting, not sitting, but actually being active in changing the world. And I got to give myself a little broom pin. I've never seen one. Not a witch, not nothing like crazy, no Halloween stuff. A broom for cleaning up while we're at. We know when we leave. I know I left the house, I made the bed. You make the bed, you clean the dishes before you go. Not waiting on company. You just do that because it's what's required. It's being a good steward of what God's given you. Are we being a good steward of what this time that the Lord has given us? No, we're not. We could do much better. And Morality Moves is about sweeping the area that we're in. And I'm going to focus on the area of media because I can. Because that's what bothers me. And that's the area that I want to talk about. My way is narrow because God's way is narrow. Matthew 7:14, he says, narrow is the way that leads to eternal life. We're talking about Jesus. But narrow is the way of right and wrong. Not everything is right. You might say, Jacqueline, no, let's go along and get along. Oh, yeah, give me the money out your wallet. Oh, I can't take it, huh? No, it's wrong. You're right. There's such thing as right and wrong. If you fall off a bridge, one or two things going to happen, right? Of a New York skyline, gravity. We respect all forms of the law of gravity, but we also got to respect just the law of righteousness, what's right and what's wrong. And the Lord calls that. I do not call it. The Lord calls up and down. We want to call down up or sideways. And it's just not going to work that way. So the Bible says, Philippians 4:8, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is noble, whatsoever is a good report. I don't say that. That's Philippians 4:8. Whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is noble, whatsoever is a good report. He says, think on these things. So if you're thinking on these things, that means don't think of the perversion, don't think of the foolishness, don't think of the darkness, because what you consume, you become. And don't tell me your eye gate has nothing to do with your soul gate. Oh, it certainly does. So that's the premise behind Morality Moves. And in this generation of these young kids, the teenagers, and trying to look for role models, you can't find it in entertainment. So I come saying, as Christians, we should make that standard and saying this is wrong, what's right and what's wrong. So that is Morality Moves. And I like to go back into history. You know, I'm in social services. When going back, I should have been a history teacher because I sure love history. We got to learn from history. We have to learn from those who came before us, that there was those who were before us, and walk according to them. And when I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, going to do go back a little bit in history of those who've gone before us and who actually did stand up in difficult times. I cannot complain. Not in this 2024. You can, but I check myself. I came here in a car. I didn't come here in a horse and buggy. I came in air conditioning or with heat. I didn't have to paddle here. I come anywhere I want to come. I can have my coffee, microwave, punch anything. I have no right to complain. So those who had much less than us did much more than us. And they will continue to serve as pillars of symbols of how we should be walking in a corrupt society. Sometimes we are the children of light. And like I used to say before, for the light to show, if you go in a dark room, just turn on the light. That's all you need to do. You're not going to pray about it. You're going to walk over and turn on the light. Now, God says that we are the salt and light of the world. So when darkness needs to flee, we need to show up. Show up and show out. Don't be home watching Netflix, eating popcorn. There's a time and place for that. But we got to be about God's kingdom, the Father's kingdom. And we got to be about pushing back the forms of darkness wherever you see it. You know, when there's a good fight, get in it. And John Lewis, he says, find a way to get in the way. Find a way to get in the way. Now, you just trying to find a way to get in the way of just good TV show or comfort. There's a time and a place for that. But your life, our life should be about getting in the way of making change for those who are behind us. In addition to everything else we try to do in this world, let's make sure we clean as we go. So that's always a big introduction of morality moves. I just keep on going back to that because we could never do enough or be enough. And in the world of society where everybody's coming out and saying what they're about, our Christians should always gracefully say, this is right and this is wrong. You know, let's follow the way of righteousness because it leads to right living, keeping your temple holy, keep your mind right. God's ways are always right. So I'm going to, because I could talk to you forever, but let me go back into some of my notes here that I have here and talk about people that actually made a difference. Again, if I probably would have gone back, I probably would have been a history major and talked to high school students about their history because that's the standard. People who've gone through hard times with less and kept going, where you're like, how in the wild world of sports you're still moving? Only by the grace of God they did, to make sure that you can have a seat at the table. Shirley Chisholm, I digress, but Shirley Chisholm, there's a new movie coming out about her, and she was the first black congresswoman of New York. And of course I like her because I was born in New York, but that's not the only reason. But Shirley Chisholm, she was the first black congresswoman, and she made a difference. And she said no one gave her a seat to the table. She brought her own table. She made the own difference. She made sure she got out there and she made a change. So I'm going to talk to you a little, and I think a movie's coming out about her, but she made a big difference in her time. Let me read to you really quick about Frederick Douglass. I just appreciate Frederick Douglass. We got to talk about these great pillars of history. We have to be reminded in a world of just instant gratification, the get it now, forget about later, not counting the cost society that we're currently living in. We have to be reminded of those who came before us who had nothing, and we have everything. We have everything. We have to be reminded that it's good to get things, but don't let things get you. You can get things. I'm all for things, as long as the things don't get you, right? And now sometimes in our society, we're allowing the things become our gods, and they're just things. But let those things be resources for what God wants you to do with them. Again, I digress, but Frederick Douglass. Oh, Frederick Douglass. You know, he was here in Boston, Massachusetts. I think it was in New Bedford, When he first came out of slavery, I think he came towards New Bedford. I didn't know that. New Bedford, Massachusetts. Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, we probably all reminded who Frederick Douglass was, but he was a slave. And he wrote his own autobiography, if you can imagine that. He even had to, during that time, 1800s, probably late 17s, early 1800s, he wrote his own narrative. They didn't believe him, but he fought to read and write. He grew up as a slave. Grew up as a slave, and something inside him, no person, God has put in everyone's heart that you don't have to be a slave. He knew right from wrong. He knew he did not have to be a slave, right? Even though society was saying this is a standard, inside him, he knew he knew inside that God did not make him a slave. You can call me a slave, but I'm not calling myself a slave. So very early on, guess what he did, Frederick Douglass? He would exchange some food to poor white children to learn how to read. Anything he could do, because it was illegal at that time to learn how to read. And Frederick Douglass, he kept fighting. Something inside him, similar to Harriet Tubman, saying, I do not want to be a slave. You have a choice. So Frederick Douglass, he got out, he fought, he escaped slavery. He came here to New Bedford, Massachusetts, if I could not be mistaken, which is amazing. He was able to escape, and he wrote, and he fought all his life. He used his whole life, he fought to fight against slavery. So he moved in morality. And I will never get tired of reading about Frederick Douglass in his own book, his own narrative that he wrote himself. And this is what he said on Frederick Douglass. This is a quote he said. Those who profess freedom but depreciate agitation, they want crops without plowing the ground. They want rain without thunder or lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roars of its mighty waters. This struggle may be a moral or physical one, or it may be both, but it must be a struggle. Then he says this: power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, it never will. Again, he said, power concedes nothing without demand. It never did, it never will. And then he continued to say that, essentially he's saying that nothing good comes easy. You got to get in the fight. There's no such thing of wanting crops without plowing the ground, or you want rain without thunder or lightning. In other words, it's going to get messy. But he says power concedes nothing. Before Martin Luther King there was Frederick Douglass in his time. He says power concedes nothing without demand. In other words, no power is going to be given to you. You're going to have to go and demand it. Go and get it. It never did, it never will. So when we see society as it is, and we keep saying this is just how the world's going to go, what are we doing? Are we willing to put ourselves out there and say, no, this is not what we're going to do? Get a group together. It could be with magazines that are very sexually explicit. Cosmopolitan has been around since the New York Minute. It's been around a long time. All these sexually explicit magazines and just TV shows, and it will not go away unless you put a standard against it, a demand against it. It never did, it never will. So when we see things just continuously, increasingly getting worse and worse, where are the Christians? Where are those who are saying, no, this is not appropriate? No, we're going to respectfully say we're not going to do this in the school system. Same thing with the criminal justice system. You know, what are we doing? Are we just letting it go? And that's where I'm going to keep reminding us about people who said, no, we're not. We're going to make a difference. I'm reminded of Ella Baker. We know about Harriet Tubman, but you don't know about Ella Baker. Or Fannie Lou Hamer. She's another one. I can go on forever. That was Frederick Douglass, and we're talking about the times of slavery. And they did it in that they were the minority, uncomfortable, and then also too coming through slavery as Frederick Douglass did, and knowing the the lashes of slavery and all its brutality, he was still able to fight out of that, and then still call those outside saying, this is wrong. This is wrong. We should not, this is wrong. And how many of us are continuing to say that, regardless of using your whole life to make, your whole life and saying this is wrong and let's do something right about that. Ella Baker was another one. Ella Baker was during the time of Martin Luther King. She was able to work with the youth. She worked with John Lewis. So we're talking about the 1960s. She never married. She was about SNCC, Student Nonviolent Committee, somewhere in the South. They're about the voting rights. She was also working with the NAACP, so in the 60s. And again, she never married, didn't have any children, but her passion was change. Her passion was speaking about voting, about illiteracy, and also working with the youth during that time of Martin Luther King, during the time of freedom rides, and really trying to get out the vote. And she used her life to say, no, this is wrong. That the blacks should mobilize, the youth have a voice. And a lot of the civil rights movement was young people. I don't know if a lot of people know this, going to jail. The freedom rides, those young people, college kids, Diane Nash as well. I don't know if I have her booklet, I left Diane Nash. Diane Nash as well, along with John Lewis in the 1960s, they were doing the freedom rides. What were freedom rides? They were going through the interstate down the South and trying to desegregate all the bus stops, because legally you should have been able to desegregate them with the federal mandate. But the cities and the states like Mississippi and the South, that weren't allowing that. So they put their own bodies on the line. Again, morality moves, another example, own morality on the line to try to desegregate that. And Ella Baker was a leader, much older leader for them during that time. And she also had, and these were some of the quotes that she said. You must organize, dedicate, and willingness to do what has to be done. Make the struggle every day, she said. They have to make the struggle every day in the year until they win. So make the struggle every day. And again, that's during the time when women were not allowed to really speak up, but she did not stop her. Ella Baker is equivalent to Harriet Tubman, but we don't hear about Ella Baker. And that's sad. That's why I like to bring that up, because she actually was moving in morality. And she didn't have any children of her own. She didn't have any children of her own, but she looked around and she said, no, this is wrong. We should expect more. And she gave her whole life, Ella Baker, to doing better. She gave her whole life to doing better. And I think, so that's one of them. So those were people during the time that they didn't have the comforts we had today. None of the comforts they had today. And plus didn't have the money that we have today, or the access that we have. We don't have to worry about lunch counters or desegregation of those things. Discrimination and racism still exists. Of course it does. But they moved in spite of that. And granted, I know they had their own hardships and struggles, but they moved in that. And that's where I challenge us. That's why I always like to be reminded of these leaders, because they moved in spite of their own challenges. They kept on moving. And are we doing that? Are we doing that? I personally couldn't be here for a few months. I had to keep recording. Last year, I thank God, but my husband's doing better. But he had a report, like a cancer report. Thank God he's doing much better. My mom just recently had a stroke. I had to be in Jersey for a period of time, back and forth, as the older daughter, to making sure she's okay, still trying to make sure she's okay. So things are going to always keep coming, that sometimes in life you just got to take a pause, right? Take a knee, right? And saying, Lord, I'm looking up, help me look through this. But then you get up and you keep working towards what God has called you. In spite of challenges, in spite of difficulties, you keep moving. You take a knee sometimes, right? Because sometimes life is going to hit you hard. And say, Lord, the wind done knocked me out today, Lord. But then the Lord gives you strength for a new day. Just as those who went before us, those great leaders, Harriet Tubman, she got hit in the head. I think by a slave master, she got hit in the head, and that gave her visions. But she kept moving. Frederick Douglass, how many lashes did he get? But he kept fighting. And if he didn't fight, himself out of slavery, we would have never known about Frederick Douglass and all the craziness really inside of slavery in his own books. So what I'm saying is that there's always going to be difficult times, but the Lord sees you through it. But he still has a job for you to do. Like I said before, we know our start date, right, when we're born. We don't know the end, but the only thing we control is the dash. That's the only thing you control. You can't even control yourself waking up in the morning. That's why I thank the Lord for a brand new day, and I have no right to complain. So we can only control the dash. And God's going to say to those, and I'm speaking to those Christians, he's going to say, well done, thou good and faithful servant. Enter in the joy of the kingdom. I want him to say, well done, not, well, what have you done? What have you done with the time I gave you, Jackie? And I'm not during the time of slavery. God allowed me to be born at such a time as this. Such a time as this. And when you look around, you got to say to yourself, what is your time? Why did God allow me to be here? And let us not get caught up in the busyness of the day, in the paying of bills and running errands and going back and forth. And before you know it, what has your time? What are you offering back to the Lord? Now, granted, the highest profession is raising children, even doing the best job you can at your job. What has God given you to do? As he told Moses, what's in your hand? When Pharaoh is coming towards him, hope I'm not paraphrasing this wrong now, but God said, what is in your hand, Moses? God will always ask us what's in our hands, what's in our resources. And I'm showing you examples of people who had less than we did do much more than we did, right? It was much colder probably back in that time, right? But they got their jacket on and they kept on moving. Susan B. Anthony, she is another great woman. Never married. Probably called her never married, but she along with another person, worked alongside for voting rights for women tirelessly, really trying to be out there, also trying to help the blacks at that time. She just went all over Congress speaking about voting rights for women. She put that upon herself. And when she died, she said, don't cry too long, just keep on moving for the movement. So I say the same thing about us. Yes, we're busy. Yes, we got a lot of things to do. But in your heart of hearts, what has God called you to do? What is your purpose? What are the things that before you close your eyes on this side of the world and you open it up next side before the Lord? What was that task that God had you to do? Why did you come here on earth? And what are the tasks that God has you to do? That he says to you, well done, thou good and faithful servant. The highest task is telling people about Jesus, telling people about the Lord. And alongside that, what are the gifts, what are the talents, what has he used your hands to do? So I'm a very strong advocate about that, because life is not about eating and drinking and about just making sure that we're good. Because these are people who've done things that were outside of them. That were outside of them. Martin Luther King himself, no man's perfect except Jesus. Ain't no one perfect except the Lord. We're all human. We only the Lord we only stand and fall before God. But Martin Luther King, this Nobel Peace Prize, he gave all his money back to the movement. He worked tirelessly for the movement. Him and Coretta Scott King, they gave everything they had for the movement. and just to make sure that the blacks at that time had everything that they needed. And what are we giving? How are we giving? I think there will always be great examples. So that was Ella Baker. I spoke of Ida B. Wells, Princess of the Press. Just another amazing person who used her pen to talk about the ills of slavery, of lynching at that time, even of slavery. She was during the time of Frederick Douglass, and she talked about how, again, all the ills of slavery or what was going on. So again, we're talking about the 1800s, and she was a woman. Her mother and father died very early on. She had to take care of her siblings. She was going to school to be a teacher. She had to go back home. She finished teaching. She helped raise her siblings. Just amazing young individual who said, you know what, it's not about me. Let me take care of my siblings. But she saw, as she was living her life, this is where the broom comes in. As she was living her life, she was seeing and hearing atrocities, what was going on. She had a good friend, Calvin, who was a black business owner at that time, grocery owner, who was in competition with the white owner across from him. And Calvin, who was Ida Wells' friend, was getting more of the patrons coming to him. So what happened was, what always happens during that time of slavery, is that the white owner made up some type of lie to get Calvin into jail. And long story short, Calvin was taken out of jail. He was killed massively. He was just killed by the mob. They tortured him and killed him. This was Ida's friend. And from that, Ida said, okay, this is no way. Ida had to be less than 5 feet tall, just like Harriet Tubman, 5 feet tall. Ida B. Wells, taking care of her children, went to be a school teacher, right? But also she had the gift. She also was a journalist. She liked to write. She saw what happened to her friend. And then from there on, like they said, the rest was history. She said, oh, no way. There was no uproar about it, but she used her pen, and she was during a black, she was also writing in a black newspaper. She said this was an atrocity. She started speaking out, and there she began speaking out about the atrocity of lynching, of just what's going on. And that was Ida B. Wells. And she had to run for her life because she talked again about all the atrocities. And she was against, she created an 1890 anti-lynching campaign, not only here in the United States, but she would go abroad and say, look what the United States is doing. Look what's going on here. So don't tell me just because you're a woman, now a woman in the 1800s, you know, we had less rights back then, a black woman, and then a woman, not tall. She wasn't tall. So God looks on the inside. He doesn't look on the outside. So she said, wait a minute, what can I do? Again, there were no cars at that time, right? She didn't have a lot of money. She had to her parents died. She could have stayed in the corner and been depressed but she said, no, what's going on over here? So that is an example that although life can hit you hard, you rest a little bit, but you get back up and see what God has you to do. And she made sure that in 1890, she was about an anti-lynching campaign. Now listen to this. Black pastors did not support her. She had battles with racism and sexism. So she had those two arms. I'll read that again. Black pastors, male pastors, because they're black pastors, did not support her because only male pastors during that time. We're talking about the 1800s, right? And again, did I say that she was strong and mighty? She was small, but she was strong and mighty in stature, and so was her pen. Black pastors did not support her. Now, she was talking about anti-lynching. She was talking about what's going on. Black pastors did not support her. She had battles with racism and sexism. So she was coming on both ends here, right? But guess what? She was uncompromising. I like that word. That should be a t-shirt. She was uncompromising. In other words, she did not move. And she ain't moving. All 5 feet of her is not moving. Remind me of Harriet Tubman, about 5 feet too. God uses. Don't realize what God's going to use. God's going to use, like David, people you don't expect. And Harriet had her gun, so but Ida had her pen. Ida had her pen and she used it. And Harriet had her gun, She had some other stuff, but she had a big gun, right? But Ida used her pen. So she had to be fighting. She had to be fighting the black pastors, racism and sexism in the 1890s. That's why I ain't complaining about nothing, right? I can't complain in our generation of remote controls and all these little gadgets. We really shouldn't be complaining, unless But she was uncompromising. Now, are we compromising? Are we compromising? Right? Are we going along to get along? Don't want to rock the boat. Are we doing all that? Then we part of the problem. No wonder the world's like it is. No wonder, right? Because it is the Christians, is those, and don't tell me this was not. Now we say, Jackie, this is right and wrong. Now this was wrong. Slavery is wrong, right? Slavery is wrong. So she was uncompromising, and she was one of the founders of the NAACP. She was one of the founders. So she was no joke. Ida B. Wells, the princess of the press, all black young journalist women most of them look up to Ida B. Wells. So that I can keep going on and on and on. I probably could. But about people who made a huge difference in that to stand up is going to inconvenience you. To stand up for righteousness, it's going to inconvenience you, but you got to do it. If Ida didn't do it, we wouldn't know so much things about the anti-lynching campaign and just her bringing light to it. She went into the World's Fair in the 1930s, big World's Fair back in the day. I think it was the 1800s World Fair. 1800s, maybe early 1900s, the first World Fair of its kind, that people would just come around the world. Ida B. Wells created her own pamphlet telling people about the atrocities, what's going on here in the United States, and she was just giving that to whoever come alongside her. Her and Frederick Douglass created that pamphlet to tell people of all the atrocities that are transpiring in the United States. Those two people. In other words, if God is giving you the mind, giving the will, one person with the God makes a majority. They were fearless and tireless, and they kept voicing, again, morality moves, what was right and what was wrong. As I stated, Shirley Chisholm, there's a movie coming out about her. I think Regina King is going to be doing that movie about Shirley Chisholm. She was the first African American woman in Congress in 1969, and she told her story. She said when she was in Congress, when she'd eat at the lunch table, no person would sit next to her. Nobody. She would raise her hand in Congress and stuff. They wouldn't call on her. But was she moved? No, she was not. She was moved. She was not. She made sure that she was a force to be reckoned with, and she spoke truth. And she was also a founder of the Women's Political Caucus. She was involved in that. So she didn't let that stop her. It didn't matter how many people didn't speak to her, but she made sure that she got across what her constituents needed. Now, are we being swayed left and right by the voices of other people? Are we being intimidated by that? We can, for those who are Christians, we can do all things through Christ, who gives us strength. If God gives us the strength, then we can go and we can change the school system. We could try to make it easier for fairer jail sentences, because we know African Americans and whites, there's a discrepancy. There's always been a discrepancy. Are we changing that? Instead of just talking about it, what are we doing about it? What's our corner that we're sweeping? Because there's a lot of stuff to sweep in. What's our corners? And like I said before, back in the day, if you look at all the histories, Christians, we've been in all of it, because we call wrong and right. The morality has come from do not do this, and that's from the Bible. Last time I checked, that's in the Bible. That's always in the Bible. So it's always upon us to say, okay, where can I be cleaning and where can I be doing? That is the purpose of Morality Moves. And again, mine is mostly with the lyrics, but this is kind of like a little overview. Mine's mostly with the lyrics. And although we become very modernized, extremely modernized, you know, with the nice cars, the nice houses, the nice gadgets, but they're just things. And it's the mind behind the things. And it's a creator behind our mind who made all these things. You know, let us not get twisted. It started from somewhere. Henry Ford made that car, right? But God gave the mind to Henry Ford to create. In the beginning was God, and God created. God made us in our image, so we create. That's where it all comes from. And I digress, but when I think about the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, that's all Christian organizations. They're all Christians organizations who decided, let us be Christ in action. Now we become with the 401cs and all this stuff, and it all got its position. But the premise behind that is that Christians said, let's go help. Let's go do this. And Christians still should be about helping and doing this. Fannie Lou Hamer, she's just an amazing woman. I gotta always talk about Fannie. You think I was family as much as how much I talk about Fannie Lou Hamer, but she's another one that people don't know a lot of. But Fannie Lou Hamer was born in 1900s. She died in 1977 in Mississippi. I think she was one out of the youngest of 20. Yeah, I'm reading my notes. The youngest of 20 sharecropper. Couldn't read much, read some. At the age of 12, she dropped out of school. So when I'm thinking of sharecropper, right? Sharecropper, not much education, had to be there helping, taking care of her family. But she was able to read. So the family put upon her to help understand with the books, what have you, because her parents couldn't read. All she knew was being working as a sharecropper, and her family before then were slaves, and then they're the sharecroppers. She'd look around as a young child like, why? This was our own words. Why did I have to grow up black instead of white? I don't have any rights. Children know, children know. But however, her parents always instilled in her a sense of pride, and she just worked as hard as she could until one day, young youth came from the south, from the north to the south, to help register people to vote. Freedom votes, or Freedom Summer, they called it. Yeah, Freedom Summer. And the hundreds of college students, black and white, came to Mississippi. And Fannie Lou Hamer is looking at the first time she saw black and white working together about voting. And then Fannie Lou Hamer said, wait a minute, there's a better way. I want to learn about this. So Fannie Lou Hamer single-handedly decided, I want to get involved. She had a booming voice. A booming heart. And she said, this is wrong. I want to go vote. You weren't allowed to vote. This was a woman in her 40s. This was not a young woman. This was a woman in her 40s, not a young woman, who started galvanizing people around her while she worked alongside the black and white youth who came down to Freedom Summer there. She got involved with them. Something in there says, she's right, this is wrong. I always knew this was wrong. This segregation, this slavery, this is wrong. I can't vote. She got involved with them. And how did she get involved? She started telling other people, let's try to go around, let's try to see how we can get people to vote, vote, sign up to vote. And because she was doing all of that, the owners of where she was living at the time. Now she was older, in her 40s. Said, you better stop all this voting stuff, trying to get people to vote, or else was no joke back in the day. Or else, this is the 1960s. Fannie Lou Hamer had to be like in her 40s, and she said, I'm trying to vote for me, not for you. And they shot up where she lived. Almost got her husband. She had to go running for her life, but she didn't stop. And this was Fannie Lou Hamer in her own words. That's why I want to be reminded of Fannie Lou Hamer. And she didn't stop. Once she saw that she had that someone can help her and help others, not just her, to get her rights to vote, rights to a better life, rights to stop living in how she's living. She goes, I'm gonna do this. She said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. She says, I ain't got nothing to lose. So she got involved. She got other people involved. She tells in her own story of her coming from a voting community event in a Greyhound bus. So this is the 1960s. Again, Fannie Lou Hamer is, Lyndon B. Johnson is the president. So this is the 60s. In Mississippi, she tells her own story about her getting off a Greyhound bus and having to, at the rest stop where they're coming from a community voting event, to get out the vote, when the state troopers stopped the bus, stopped them, asked for Fannie Lou Hamer herself, and she had to go to the police station. And this was a time when Medgar Evers died. It was around the same time. Medgar Evers is a whole nother story. NAACP, he was shot in front of his house. His children, was there, and he must have been 37, 38. But he also gave everything he had. So we have to be reminded of those who came before us in the modern times that we're living, in the ease of time that we're living, to always stop and be reminded that it was sacrifices and people gave of themselves to be where we're at today, to have a seat at the table. That's what I'm saying. Have a seat at the table. And if we have a seat at the table, what are we doing at that table? Playing video games all day? Are we just on Facebook all day? Are we doing me all day while we're looking and the world is just burning up? Whereas God has placed us in this time and this season. Now, granted, sometimes seasons get a little bumpy, but when God gives you a little more ease, what are we doing with that time and with that seasons? They did a lot with that during that time. So what are we doing with that? So Fannie Lou Hamer, Medgar Evers was killed during the time of Fannie Lou Hamer when she went to jail. Fannie Lou Hamer tells her own story about this. This was her own words. So the state troopers had her come in, and this is a 40-year-old woman. 40-year-old woman with her nice coat, house coat. Nice dress, like church dress, pocketbook. Very, very respectable 40-ish woman. State trooper comes in, and he's screaming down the hall. This is Fannie Lou Hamer talking, that they're beating the other young women because they wanted to vote. They're trying to instill terror because they wanted to vote. And now they're coming into Fannie Lou Hamer's cell. Now, this is Fannie Lou Hamer telling herself. This is her own words I heard her saying. She said, now they come to my cell. They said, who are you? She said, I'm so-and-so. They said, where are you from? She said, I'm from the so-and-so. They're like, oh, we heard about you. You're that troublemaker. And they said, you're going to wish you were dead. And they went on. Fannie Lou Hamer told her own story. She went on to say, all because I wanted to vote. They beat my head. They punched me, they beat me, and her kidneys, her eyes, she was never the same. She was never the same. She probably couldn't have children after that. She goes, all because I wanted to vote. And do you think she stopped after that severe beating? Do you think she stopped? No, she did not. She did not stop. She went in front of Congress. She said, all because I want to vote. My phone doesn't stop harassing me, all because I want to vote. And she never stopped. She helped found the co-founder and vice chair of 1964 Freedom Democratic Party. Because she goes, we need to get in front of the party so we can get our lives together, so we can vote, so we can have accountability for our rights in Mississippi, so we can say this is what we want in Mississippi. I just want a seat at the table. So she kept going and she kept moving. And she was severely, when I say severely beaten, she was severely beaten. Like she was an animal. She was an animal. And then life-lasting effects of her injuries up until she died in 1977, when she died of cancer, 1977. But during her time, 1917 to 1977, she made sure that besides voting, guess what she did? She did a pig farm. She did vegetables for people because people were hungry, because there were no type of programs back in the day. So she's like, I'll be the program. While she was getting her men's to get herself together, she rested a little bit, but then she's like, I still got to help the people. So Fannie Lou Hamer was no joke. Fannie Lou Hamer was no joke. She did a pig farm. She did butter beans. She did vegetables for people, and she gave it to people who were hungry. Then she asked people, send more stuff so I can give it away. That's what she did. That's what Fannie Lou Hamer did. And who do we hear about? We hear about all the foolishness, all the rock stars, all the type of foolishness. The kids don't know about this stuff, right? This is the real stuff. Like I said again, why am I here? There are people who've gone before us. They gave their life before us. And maybe, it may be some people be like, well, she didn't do a lot, Jacqueline. But she gave everything. She gave everything she had. And she started in her 40s. She knew this was wrong. She went alongside somebody, say, I'm going to give it. And she gave everything she had. And she didn't have no money. Everything she had, she gave. Everything she had, she gave. And again, this is no TV. She had no cars. She was never wealthy. She don't even have her own show. But we know about Oprah Winfrey, all this stuff. We don't know about Fannie Lou Hamer. We don't know about Shirley Chisholm. Now a movie coming along, Ella Baker. But these were the people that gave all of them. They gave it all. They gave it. And then some. And And nobody was clapping. Nobody was giving no money. They gave it all. Because they were looking to the one. They only had an audience of one. They're looking at God, and God's the one that's going to bless them. So those were some, and there's a reason why I digress. And as I come back again, I set the stage. Because they said there was a problem. They didn't look for no one else to solve it. They looked in the mirror. They didn't look behind. They looked to the left. They looked straight ahead. Say, okay, Lord, you and me make the majority. Let's go get this. Let's go get this clean. So when we going back and let's go get this clean. So they gave it all. Now how much they give it all? So I say that mine is the sexually explicit music lyrics and videos, and I'm appalled by that. I will always be appalled by that. That's not it's not entertainment. Now some of the songs could be nice and entertainment, but when those that are not entertainment, when it's becoming very sexually explicit, we should be calling it so. More so when it's becoming mainstream. So mine will continue becoming here the last fourth Sunday from 3 to 4, bringing speakers or just reminding us what I'd like us to do with the sexually explicit music and videos. And while we're here, let's clean this area. Because if we're not, because someone said that when you're silent about something, you're agreeing with it. And sometimes you're silent because you're not aware of it. But once you become aware of it, and sometimes you're aware of it, but you don't know what to do about it. But I do say that we have a responsibility as Christians to clean and do something about it. We should be responsible for the generation that's coming behind us older folk, behind us, and try to clean up as you go. And you might say to yourself, but Jacqueline, I don't have any kids. I got too much time. What do you need me to do? Someone's auntie or something. If not, just godchild, or volunteer. All of us as responsible, because God holds us with time, with age and experience to help those who don't know any better, So time would just go on all the people that really have made a difference, that stood in the gap and said, this is wrong. We should not be doing this. Stood in the gap. We should not be doing this. There should be a better way. And you might say, oh, Jacqueline, this is just entertainment, because mine is the music lyrics and music videos. Whole thing about the movies and all this other stuff. I mean, it has just become progressively degrading. You're trying to find some type of niceness or cleanness to it back in the day, but you have more degrading moments than clean moments. And then we wonder why our kids are coming out the way they are. We are the problem. Ain't nobody calling something wrong. Something wrong is wrong. If I steal from you, that's wrong. That's wrong. Wrong is still wrong. And you might say, but Jacqueline, it's just I just wanted to talk to you about all those amazing people, and I'll still be reminded and bring amazing people before you, because we need to be reminded. In our way of modernism, it's all good. I appreciate it, but use your modern times and your modern technology for good, and not allowing it for the progression of degradation that I'm seeing with these explicit music videos and lyrics. And this is the sound play of our children today. And you might say, Jacqueline, what's the big deal? It's just entertainment. Ain't no one take that seriously. Who cares what you see on TV? Who cares what you hear on the music? Who cares, Jacqueline? It's just what it is. You gotta get with it. Well, then I gotta talk to you about one of my favorite shows ever. Pastor Hobbs gonna know what this is. One of my favorite shows ever. That was Good Times. Good Times. I'm not gonna sing. I forget how it goes. Right, Mr. Hobbs? Remember? Yeah. Okay. Good. I forgot the song. Right. Good Times. Favorite. 1974. Right.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly, but
I know. That's so true, right? That song, right? Come running when you hear that song, right? Exactly. Yes. It was 1974. Esther Rolls. Yeah. Remember Esther Rolls, yes, Pastor Hobbs?
Of course.
Yeah. She was a strong character, the strong woman character, and she was amazing. I would stay glued to that TV set. She did a story in Ebony, 1978. I just wrote this down. It was Norman Lear, who passed away, who did those shows. Norman Lear, he died. He was the producer back in the day. He did Maude, All in the Family, and he did Good Times. And he starred Esther Roll as the main person. She came from Maude. This was a 1970 show. And Esther Roll, just amazing character, African-American woman. And Norman Lear wanted her to play a single mother in the projects. And this was 1970s. And Esther Roll said, oh, no. You imagine Esther Roll said, no. I need to have me a husband next to me, Norman Lear. Esther Roll said this in the 70s. So don't tell me that what we portray, people don't internalize that and accept it and normalize it. She said, oh, no, Norman Lear. Now, she didn't Esther Roll told Norman Lear, no, I need James next to me. I had me a strong father figure. This is her own words, 1978. She grew up in a large family where her father was present. She said, I had a good father. And I wanted, this is Esther Roll saying, I wanted to portray a family as mine did. So, the great Esther Roll changed the whole family of good times by that one voice. We all know the father was there, James. And I did not know Esther Roll. It wasn't Norman Lear didn't want a man. Norman Lear didn't want that. He wanted to continue to portray the single black woman struggling by herself in the projects in Chicago. And Esther was like, no, I don't want that. Now, Esther Roll didn't have a contract. Esther Roll didn't have a lot of money. Esther Roll didn't have a say. Now, Esther Roll was a woman, 1970s. She was a black woman, right? And during that time, because looks were so, you're supposed to look a certain way. She was a darker woman with a small afro, so this was very different, right? And she said no. So, and because of her saying no, we had James. So what am I saying? Keep saying no. Keep setting that standard. We have no excuses. We have people who've gone before us to say, no, let's do this differently. And let's show a different light. Because it's not us, it's the children behind us looking. So I say, join me on this. I say, cease and desist. We're not with this. This ain't entertainment. This is degrading, deplorable, disturbing. This is perversion. The music lyrics, and you should push against it. Call the radio station. Say cease and desist. Tell them the conductor, Jacqueline. Tell them the conductor says we ain't with this. And I will see you every fourth Sunday. I keep confusing that. Fourth Sunday at 3:00 with Morality Moves and more discussions how we can continue to pushing back, because you are what we need in this society. Each one help us to push back the forces of darkness and clean up over here now. Let's keep on cleaning. So I'll see you next time, the fourth Sunday. God bless you. Again, the conductor officially signs off. Have a great Sunday.